So I'll just give this context here. Okay, so as we look at the definition of business analysis, we've got the definition from BA Bach at the top right here. Let's unpack that and put that onto the whiteboard. Okay, so business processes is a key underlying portion here. And the word that goes with this is workflow. Okay. All right, so this is where the business analyst spends time. And if we look at this enabling change, organizational context, recommending solutions that deliver value, okay. Think of organizational context. This is the one up here. This is the first system that's really the most important. Here's the organization, which means the people. Okay, and these people, put a comment there. These people basically have user tasks that they're doing. Okay. And then the third item, if we say system, what always comes to everybody's mind? IT instantly, right? Okay. So that's what the third system is. So IT, this is the software and hardware. It's comma, period. All right, so from a software hardware perspective here, this gets a little bit more variety to it. Here we're talking about web apps, mobile apps, could be services. From an SOA perspective, service-oriented architecture. So that's generally what that means. Perfect example of service-oriented architecture is Amazon's AWS services, Amazon Web Services. They have about 50 services there. You just go to their homepage, and it's with the big data type interest. I'd recommend you take some time and go through learn about Amazon Web Services. Okay, because when they say web services, they don't mean the front end stuff that you visually see. When they're talking Amazon Web Services, they're talking about all the back end infrastructure, data processing in the cloud. So their services are all oriented towards that. I can't think of any of their services that are actually front end visual. All of their services are, here's what your data center can look like when it's cloud-based. It's like, oh, you want to be able to have a relational database? Oh, here's Redis. Oh, you want an NoSQL database for big data? Oh, here's DynamoDB. Oh, you need some security and authentication control? Here's this other thing. Need storage? Oh, here's S3. So the Amazon has a huge amount of services in there. So from I know Paul, I don't know what's on your letters of intent, but I know Paul does offer and it's on a contract basis with another company, the Amazon Web Services Architect class. There's also an Amazon Web Services Development class. So their Architect class has been really good. The Development class is a hit or miss depending on who the instructor is. So he is wanting to bring that in-house, so we just teach it and have control over it completely. But the Amazon Web Services is really good because it is the nature of how the technology economy works. It's a good example. All right, so the other thing that we've got in here is system interaction. So, and what do I mean by that? Okay, if you're doing VA jobs, you could be doing VA that's strictly front end. Okay, so it's like, okay, what do these users need now? What about this mobile app or this web app? What's the next feature that's relevant? So it's very heavily engaged with stakeholders that are the end users for the most part, or people that represent the end users. But there's another type of business analysis perspective where instead of being on the on the front end with your browser, front end meaning browser, whether that's running on a mobile or running on a web. Sorry, so from a mobile perspective app, what about on the back end? So the back end over here is where there's a lot of functionality that has to be put together to service the clients. Okay, so two examples of people that are business analysts that I've had in my classes. I've been with MITS for about a year and a half or two. So I also took a couple of years off after I got laid off. It's like, tired of working too many hours. Gonna take a long break here. Financially, we were quite reasonable, so it's like, long break is what we're gonna do. So the least money I ever made in my life was in 2016. Okay, so on the back end here, there's two different types of business analysis examples with a back end focus. One was a benefits package service. Okay, so what this was specifically, and Jennifer is the gal who was working in this capacity. Their clients were various companies. I think there's like 20 or 30 companies. I forget the exact quantity. And every one of them had their own little tweaks for competitive advantage over others in their industries in order to attract employees and retain employees. So everybody's got their own specialization on the benefits package. So on the back end, they had to provide all of the database structure, support, and services and business rules to be able to handle whatever the tweaking and tuning was on the benefits package. So that was a back end office type work. There's another gal who is a business analyst. She was working with interstate commerce. So if you have a company that's got locations in one or more states in the United States, so it's actually interstate tax law. Okay. So Stacy was her name. She was working in an environment where tax laws are constantly changing, right? So, and it's fairly difficult for companies to keep up with all those changes. So they'll just say, hey, we'll pay you X thousands of dollars per month or per quarter, whatever the term of agreement is, and you just do the work for us, all right? We don't have time to chase all of the tax laws. You guys chase all the tax laws for us, let us know what's going on, and we'll work out our back-end tax analysis system so we can assess our revenue and financials properly. Okay, so this is a back-end perspective, and there's a front-end perspective. Okay, so from a business analysis perspective, I'm laying this out here because there's companies that just focus on this. There's companies that just focus on this. There's other companies that have a blend of both of them. So it's important to be able to think, where do you want to land? Do you want to land in the back end, or do you want to land in the front end, or do you want to land in both? Some company that's going to have both. So you've got to be able to look at the job postings from different companies and then go research the company and find out what are they actually providing? How do they make their money? Is it in both spaces or one or the other? Okay, so that's one key lesson in here. Right, this on the slide here when it talked about enabling change in an organizational context. All right, so when I say these are the three systems, probably should have left some room up here to write more clearly, but these are the three systems. Why is the first one a system? So and this is something I got out of my Agile investigation, and there's an obvious answer to it that never occurred to me. So if you go if somebody goes and does an MBA, Masters of Business Administration, they always talk about organizational development. Okay, you've got an organization is a system. It's a system of groups of people. Okay, so if you look at any MBI perspective, you always have the organization of the people. Okay, so that's the first system. This middle system, this is the business processes. If you do a business process for like a loan application and review and approval, basically for getting a loan. All right, that's a very, very disciplined, repeatable, distinct process. You go through step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4, get all the way through the steps, you wind up with a loan at the end of the day. There's 2 or 3 reject points where it's like, okay, not going to continue with this. Yeah, so that's an example of business process and workflow. So what if you want to streamline that? What if you want to be able to get more loans done and processed by the loan officers? What do you have to change in the process to do that? Which of the user tasks can you actually move down into the automated space of the IT software realm? Okay, so this goes without saying, talking about this as a system. All right, so the way to think of this is that it really goes from business processes and workflow this way. And then with this taken into account first, then you can take and go this way. All right, so the heart and soul of business analysis is understanding the workflow. Okay, so when you go back over this definition, just unpacking the definition a little bit. Enabling change, we haven't touched on that yet. We just set out what is the context here. There's an organizational context. Organizational meaning the people systems, the business process systems, the IT system. Okay, so that's the organizational context. Defining needs. Defining needs, it means being able to look at that business process and say, you know what, we can save money by changing this particular series of steps. Or if it's more of a revenue generation, we'll see this on a few slides. Right now I put this into a business processes perspective. And you can, in like subtle points down here as well, just say, oh, what about product development? And services development. Okay, so those fit in there too. If the business analysis is strictly oriented towards a product that you sell to other people, or if it's oriented towards services that you sell to other people. Down here are examples of 2 services. So these are services, they're technically not products because they're so highly customized and all. I can improve my business, or I can improve my the things that get me revenue, the products or services. Every company always sells products or services based around whatever their workflow is. Okay, so defining needs are in those categories. The recommending solutions, this is a little bit different. It's like recommending solutions. I thought the solution architect recommend solutions. Okay, so VA Bach itself in version 3, which came out in 2015, they've changed their approach. They've said, you know what, we don't just define requirements anymore. Now the business analyst has to be able to recommend solutions as well. Okay, so that you see this like bleeding in of like, oh, I've got to be a little bit solution architect oriented here by thinking. So that concept is coming into the business analysis area. So deliver value, what does that look like from your perspective? What does deliver value mean? That's a common agile term. So if you're thinking about that question for a moment, yeah, it used to be that we don't deliver value to stakeholders, we deliver products and services, or we improve business processes. So this idea of deliver value to the stakeholders, this is all oriented around Agile. Agile is the one that came in and said, wait a minute, why are you guys doing all of these specifications and requirements like crazy? You're getting so locked into this tunnel vision of your specifications documents and business requirements documents that you're forgetting about the customer. And you deliver late, and you don't, and by the time you deliver, the customer has a competitive environment has changed so much that 10% or 20% of what you delivered isn't really that useful anymore. It's not valuable. Okay, so this is where Agile comes in. It says, how can you stay valuable? That means you got to shorten your delivery cycle by a lot. Okay, so if you think about delivering value to stakeholders, what would that look like for any of the jobs that you've been on?
I see it as something that's going to not only last for a duration of time, but something that is going to bring in like the return on their investment.
Mhm. So monetarized, but is the money there or not for the customer?
Yes, is it going to be something that's productive, that's going to bring in an increase or going through all whatever processes you did in order to obtain the end result?
Mhm. Yep, that works. Okay, this aspect of enabling change, we're going to see a couple slides on that in a little bit. But it basically means going from current state to future state. You always got to come over here and reshare the screen. It's not just the way it works. All right, so this business analysis body of knowledge book, collection of knowledge that defines the profession. It's got 6 knowledge areas in it. Each knowledge area includes activities and tasks, and then there's a separate listing of skills, 6 major competencies, and the certification, which I can never remember the acronym. I mean, I'm good with 3-letter acronyms, but not 4. I always forget a letter or get them mixed up. So the CBAP, Certified Business Analysis Professional, is what's available from here. So if you got that on your letter of intent, then that's something that Paul is very supportive of, saying, okay, let's go for it. Now, as we go through this course, though, the course is not oriented towards passing this certification. You got to get the book and go through these activities and tasks on your own. We outline them, but that's pretty dry material. And the huge majority of people don't go for the certification because a lot of job postings for business analysts don't require the certification. It's very common for business analysts to get their jobs without certification.
I have a question for you. Now, you said the BIBOC book, do we have to purchase that on our own?
No, Paul would get that.
Okay.
So there's electronic copy available online. I can dig out some, some people have posted PDFs. So I'll dig out a link or so on that. So you can have an electronic copy because it's free on public domain. Whether it's legally there or not, I don't know. So MITS does not provide the link. We just say here, post it over here on some website.
Okay. My next question is, at the end of this class, is there a certificate of completion?
Paul does that on an as-needed basis. I mean, certificate of completion, it depends on if you see value in that. Yeah, he does. I know he has done certificate of completions before. So maybe, again, it's more like that 10 to 20% of the people want a certificate of completion on a per course basis. Usually the state only requires a per program basis.
Okay.
And that's just the letter, successfully completed or not.
And the reason I ask that is because I know if you're certified, there are PDUs that you will obtain, but do you all offer that here, like your work hours prior to a certification versus the PDUs if you're already certified and probably just coming in for a follow-up or extended learning?
So the PDUs are, so let me do an example. So the answer is yes, but it's within the limitation of here's what MITS offers. Okay, so like take a PMP, that's got several ways of getting PDUs. Take a business analysis class, you can do another class. You can go for ACP, that'll count as a PDU, after taking training for that. So everybody usually has different starting points. So the answer to which PDUs are relevant varies based on your starting point, whether it's PMP or business analysis or something else. So The answer is yes, the PDUs are available, but it's depends on the context of whichever you're starting with for your certification. Okay. Now, the big data management analysis account is a certification. I mean, a PDU for some earned certification. All right, so this class focuses on the techniques and going through them in a hands-on fashion. So the idea is that well equipped to be in a job interview and talk about here's how this actually works. So 2 BA domains. We've got this slide and the next 2 slides after this, or actually 4 slides after this. We'll unpack each of these 2 columns here. So value from efficient business processes. This is the value chain, business process, et cetera, through task. So this is very much oriented towards what we had on the board with business process workflow. How can you make things efficient, saving money for a company? Okay. Now, if you look at the business needs and then business requirements, stakeholder requirements, go to solution requirements. The solution requirements are relevant, obviously, when you're improving the business processes, but the solution requirements are also perfectly relevant to product development and services development. Okay, so there's this 3-way blend when we talk about solutions. Let's unpack these just a little bit. So at the top of the left stack right here, we saw value chain and business process and tasks. So we'll unpack this just a little bit. All right, so value chain. So this is a technical definition. There's a guy by the name of Michael Porter in the mid-1980s. He said, you know what, a great way to look at business is what actually matters for getting the product or service out the door. If you're an auto manufacturing company, or if you're a bank or whatever you are, what do you actually need to get your product out the door or your services marketed? Okay, so they came up with this idea of a value chain. And the idea here is you're going to deliver a valuable product or service to that market. Obviously, the product or service provides revenue. And the delivery of this is a set of activities. So if you wanted to add another underline here, the set of activities that the firm uses, that's a really key concept. All right, so when you're doing business analysis, it's like, what is that set of activities? That set of activities is a workflow. There's a starting point, 1 or more ending points. Swim lane diagram, you've been exposed to that, that's great. Most people come into the class and they've never heard of a swim lane diagram. But we'll be doing a swim lane diagram. And so we can see, okay, how does it actually work? How do you represent this set of activities? Okay. So business process, it's a little bit redundant to value chain, but it gets a little bit more specific towards transforming the information, materials, or other resources to deliver value. So here we're focusing on what's the transformation. Now, the value chain is not just a listing of activity A, activity B, activity C. The business processes talks about transformation. So we're going to hit on this a few times. We just put one quick diagram on the whiteboard here. So what does every process do? And I'm going to use the word generically. If I have an activity right here, and I'll put the wording in the context of what's on the board. All right, what was on the slide. If I have an activity here that this business process is talking about transforming. Okay, the transformation happens right here. All right, transformation is always what? That perfect doesn't look good. So this process does transformation. So transformation always implies 2 things. You've got some input and you've got some output. It's obviously going to be different than the input. So that's all it is. It's nice and simple. Okay. When we're looking at a business process, this process or activity let's take some examples in here. You look at this as a macro view, or you put this on a micro view, so to speak. At macro view, you're buying a house or a condo or whatever, duplex, townhouse, whatever it might be, the place of residence. What's one of the processes, or what's the sequence of processes in there, or sequence of activities? Process, by the way, is a very generic word. And it has like 3 or 4 different definitions depending on its context of usage. So I'll try to stay away from the word process for a moment and just focus on activity. So go ahead. So what would be the sequence of activities?
Would it be a credit check? And a decision point based on if the credit is a certain level?
Right. So you got a credit check that happens. That could be one activity. What would be some other activities?
Proof of employment verification.
Okay, credit check. Okay, there's let's see. So in this context, we're looking at if your focus is on the mortgage itself. Sounds like, you know, so you have the
I would say viewing several places or viewing locations first, deciding on where you want to live.
Okay, so there's a location identification. Where do you want to live? My wife and I are immigrants from Wisconsin. That's what Wisconsin people tend to look at. Anything south of the border. There's only 2 places my wife and I said we don't want to live when we got married. One of them was anywhere in New York City, and the other was anywhere closer to Chicago than we already were. But when we moved down here, it's like, okay, this is actually blessed. It's been really good. But there's stereotype of Chicago drivers that's heavily overblown in Wisconsin. So just general perception issues, shall we say.
But if you don't have to drive in Chicago, you can drive in.
That's very true too. So this whole idea of location identification, that matters a lot. So when we're looking for a house around here, we look from everywhere from pretty much Gurney, if I do a diagonal line down to Streamwood, and probably, I don't think we couldn't really afford Des Plaines or closer to the city than that. So it's like anywhere's west, from that point west. But she did a lot of looking at houses with our 1-year-old daughter. So then she'd say, hey, I think I like this one. Let's go look at this one. So location identification, as I'm talking about that, you know, there's the location identification. Then there's the, you know, the visit.
Yes.
What do they call that? It's the open house.
Open house.
Yeah. Probably a better term, but I'm not a real estate agent, so I can't make the term pop out the top of my head right away. All right, so location identification, eventually you're going to get to a mortgage, but what happens between the location identification and mortgage?
Decide,
Put
make
in an
a
offer.
decision, make an offer on a patient,
Okay,
on a property.
right. And this itself has a number of activities in it. So that these outer items here, these are all activities. And if I make mortgage, meaning it's a get mortgage. Okay. So the key thing is that, yeah, we can string these activities together at a high level, but inside there's still probably almost, if we really wanted to articulate it, there's almost like a half a dozen different steps that are inside each of these bullets, these top 3 bullets. So a process is an interconnected, you know, sequence of workflow. So this is what workflow means. Now when you take this business process, as mentioned over here, business process is an end-to-end set of activities. So it tends to say, okay, we're not going to look at the we're not going to look at this as an individual process from a business perspective. We're going to call this thing in the middle an activity. then a sequence of activities from end to end will be our overall process, which is why we talk about business process or business processes. I prefer using the word workflow. So I've got some set of processes here, some process that's working. Now, when you go into the software world, what is a process there? You go into system number 3 and you're talking to a software development person. They invert this. They say, wait a minute, I'm not doing an activity, I'm doing a process. So they take this high level end-to-end set of activities called the process from a business viewpoint and say, no, when I write software code, I'm doing processing. I'm taking this output and providing, or this input and providing this output. So that's what I meant earlier when a process has 2 different definitions. This is a good example, like to a business person, process means end to end, here's my activities. The technical person, a process is not the end to end set of activities. It's here's my code that's doing this processing on this input, providing an output to the next software module that's providing an output to the next software module that's providing an output to the next software module. So it's a chain reaction of processing in a different perspective. Okay. So with that, we'll take a break after the 3rd slide here, third slide forward. Okay, so task then, it's a discrete piece of work that may be performed formally or informally. So discrete means there's a definitive start and end time. Here's an example of a value chain. The lower part is the value chain. It's the primary activities moving from inbound logistics through operations over to after sales service. And this is the definition diagram that came from Michael Porter. So the items above, firm infrastructure, HR, technology, and procurement, those are the supportive roles. So they really are not the primary activity. Yes, there's activity happening there from a business process perspective, but you want to minimize how much that actually costs to the business, because it's support. It's not actually providing that end service or that end product. Okay, when we look at this the second stack here, thinking about value from solutions that meet needs, we've got business needs, and we go down to solution requirements in here, business requirements tucked in the middle. We take a look at business needs, PMP, okay, so the project management professional certification from PMI. You go look at that book, they'll say, here's the categories of business need. So I like their categories, so I put it in here. The business need is always a problem or opportunity. This definition is straight out of BA-BOK. So that's another point about taking the exam for BA-BOK if you want to get certified. Best thing to do in every book is read the table of contents, then read the glossary, then read the stuff in between. You get a really quick, fast overview of what the entire book is and what the entire subject matter is that way. You just go read from page 1 through the end and then read the glossary. It's like, it's like watching a movie, but when you're trying to learn something, you don't want to, it's not like watching a movie. You want to see what's the checklist. The glossary, the table of contents are the best checklists. So that's what I do with
So you said table of contents, glossary, and then read the book. It's kind of like going from the end to the beginning and then also taking a pre-test and then come back and read the book and then find those areas, which I do.
Exactly. That's the most efficient way to use your time. And I love using books when I'm getting into a new topic, because the internet is full of information, so full that you have no idea where the end and where the start and the end of the domain of information is. So it's easy to get lost. It's a lot faster to pick up a book on the given topic. You know, like if we just pick up a smaller book like Spark. Okay, there's a book I've been using lately called Learning Spark. The book is actually really thin. It's only like a $20 book, and it's very comprehensive. It's very well written. But I can pick that up and basically in about 20 minutes know the entire terminology, the lay of the land, so to speak. And then if I actually spend time reading through it and doing the examples, then I actually learn it. That's a whole lot more efficient than going to figure it out on the internet. The internet is oriented towards a lot of details, but does not encompass knowledge very well. Way too detailed.
Okay. Can I get the name of that book though?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Now there's as I've gotten into the teaching end of things for the last year and a half, I follow the pattern that I did as a technical person at Motorola. If I need some information, I just go out and buy the book. And it's really easy to get used books that are actually really good quality from Amazon. So I've got $200 worth of books in my office. They serve very well. I'm willing to spend $20 or $30 on a book that is likely to be useful, and then I change my mind after I get it and say, well, that'll be on the second tier. The first tier is these 3 or 4 books, and then the other 3 will gather dust. But that's okay. All right, so business needs, problem or opportunity, categories, market demand. So that's obvious. You know, market's changing, people change. You know, market demand. What's the latest market demand that's happening that's relatively new here? I think relatively new within the last year or two. There's these, and I don't have this in my house yet, but my daughter, I got 3 daughters, so they're all married now. So my middle daughter and her husband have this Amazon Echo or whatever it's called.
Google.
Yeah, what's the Google one?
Alexa.
Alexa is the Amazon.
Oh, Alexa is Amazon.
And the Google one is the, I can't think of
Is that
it.
one Echo? Okay.
Oh, yeah,
Oh, that
it
one's
is
Echo.
Echo,
Okay. So I work with technology, but I'm not one to chase the latest trends.
Yeah.
I'll be the last one to actually get the mobile phone, the last one to do this, the last one to do that. Work on an as-need basis. All right, so there's a market demand though. All of a sudden this thing about you can talk to the computer essentially is starting to be like, wow, this is cool. Yeah. All right, so market demand, customer request. So on the whiteboard earlier, we had talked about customer requests. You know, in this benefits package services or interstate tax law, you know, those are clients that are making very specific requests. I'd like you to do this capability, or the government made these regulatory changes, which is another item on the bottom here, legal and regulatory considerations. So we've got to adapt. Technological changes, mobile phone comes in. You know, it's there's this one guy, I can't remember his full name, Tommy is his first name, that listened to a seminar. The guy totally aced the mobile phone trend before the trend started. In terms of what would it cost for a phone 6 years after the first phone comes available. He was off by within a couple dollars. And so his point was that by 2020 or 2022, you'll be able to buy a full-featured phone for $10 that matches what was originally produced when mobile phones first came out in mid-80s. Okay, so the technological changes have totally given us a whole way of communication. So a few other things here. Social need, clean water. There's a fellow who was a keynote speaker at a conference I went to. It's like a novel idea. It's like this guy is really smart with a team of people. They put together a way of providing clean water where you can just use a centrifugal type motion, rotation type motion, and ultraviolet light. So you're not burning any gas. you don't need any fuel to support this contraption. And it can come in a size that fits on a pickup truck, or a size that is the trailer on a semi truck, or in between. You can put it in an area where there's been a disaster. You get clean water out of some really dirty water. So it's, just socially, there's things like that that are important. All right, so a lot of different things can drive what the business analyst actually focuses on. These are a wide range of category. The business requirement itself is goals, objectives, and there's an idea of providing rationale. So this, don't get hung up on this provides rationale part though. Much the business requirement is not something the business analyst usually does. Business requirement is, we in this room say as the executive body, the executive managers, we decided we're going to do this for this reason. So here's my business requirement for our business. So y'all are the business analysts, go ahead and work towards this end. So the business requirement is high level. Okay, so let's stop here for a moment. This is still tied in with the previous slide of right up here where we talk about, where was that on slide? We go back to our definition right there of enabling change. This is a slide we'll pick up with here because we're going to do a lot more whiteboarding on the following slide after this, so we get the sense of like, okay, here's how business is actually structured. And then as we'll just give a peek forward here. And this little peek shows that we've got 3 distinct areas where the business analyst works. One's in business cases, one's in requirements, one is in QA. It's very common, and this is off of job postings. It's very common to see on job postings the BA QA role. It's also very common to find the business analyst role. You got to look under the covers and say, okay, is this for requirements? 80 to 90% will be for requirements, but there's also going to be the remaining 10 to 20% that are for working with business cases. So from a techniques perspective for business analysis, we actually cover all of these techniques in this class because all of those techniques covering business cases and requirements, not so much the QA part, but the business cases and requirements, those techniques are what's in the BA pocketbook. So that's what the certification exam would be based around. So we covered both of these areas, even though the reality is that 80-90% of the people are going to land, or almost 95% of people are going to land in the requirement space. Okay, so we'll unpack this a little bit more. Why don't we take a little break there?